Well, let's turn next to the United States and in particular the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's on edge for an all too familiar reason. On Wednesday, authorities released a police video of a white officer fatally shooting a black man, Patrick Lyoya, in the back of the head. That was after a scuffle over a stun gun or a taser. The altercation took place earlier this month and arose from a seemingly routine traffic stop. On Wednesday, protesters took to the streets and more are expected. Today, attorney Ben Crump, who's representing Mr. Lyoya's family, described the shooting at a press conference.
What you see in that video is unnecessary and justifiable, excessive use of fatal force. You see a police officer escalate a minor traffic stop into a deadly execution.
Well, joining me now from Grand Rapids is Clay J. Jackson, President of the Greater Grand Rapids NAACP, and Carlton T. Mayers, Esquire, a Special Advisor for the Public Safety with the Greater Grand Rapids NAACP. You're both so welcome to The Context. Thanks so much for joining us. Clay, maybe I'll start with you. You have said that this is not a one-time incident, and it's a very distressing incident. Of course, we're seeing some of the footage from it. Many would think, after so many discussions and soul-searching over the past couple of years, particularly the Black Lives Matter movement, after the death of George Floyd, for example, also a black man killed by a police officer, we might be in a different place now in the United States. What do you think this incident represents?
Well, thanks first of all for having us and taking time out to, I think, have a conversation around this horrific incident. And I also want to say again and reaffirm that we are standing with the family. We consent and we are sending our condolences to them. Again, it represents, in our opinion, years and years and decades of the gross harassment, racial profiling, and bullying of not only the Grand Rapids local law enforcement agency here, but this is what it looks like for law enforcement agencies across the country. And that's unfortunate. And we have been out here fighting. When I say we, I'm talking about community. I'm talking about the NAACPs. I'm talking about the urban leagues. I'm talking about the national action networks and many other on the ground movements, Black Lives Matter, all of these organizations and individuals, because each organization, right, is represented by individuals, to bring about true police reform and really laser focusing on how do we actually intentionally improve the relationship between community and police. And so now we're here again today, unfortunately, with the killing of Patrick, 26-year-old black male, and clearly, in our opinion, was not justifiable. It was excessive, and it has to stop, and something has to be done. And as the mother of Breonna Taylor said today at the press conference with Attorney Crump, is how many of our babies will have to be murdered at the hands of police or local law enforcement before we actually get it and do something meaningful.
I want to turn to Carlton. You know, Clay lays out the scenario. What do you think would justice look like in this case for you at the moment?
Well, I also want to echo what Clay said, and thank you for having us. In my opinion, what I think needs to happen, number one, is that the officer involved in this incident needs to be terminated immediately from the Grand Rapids Police Department. It's obvious that he is in direct violation of several of Grand Rapids Police Department's policies, including the use of force policy, their firearm policy, their taser policy, their body-worn camera policy, etc. That alone is enough justification for the new police chief, Eric Winstrom, who I think has been on the job for about 2 months, to do the right thing. You know, he's just started out as a new police chief. This could be a moment for him to put out a good foot, lay a good impression with the community that he is there to support them and not support toxic police culture that exists within the Grand Rapids Police Department. So that's number one. He needs to be fired. Number two, the police chief also, in my opinion, needs to initiate the decertification process, which essentially is saying that they would take away his license to be able to be a police officer anywhere in the state of Michigan. That way we can ensure that this never happens again, at least not from that officer.
And
we've seen that with cases like Mike Brown and Eric Gardner, where these officers that killed them were gypsy cops that were at other police departments engaged in misconduct. When they were investigated, they then went to another police department engaged in misconduct, no accountability.
just
So
briefly,
we want to make sure that does not happen.
Carlton and Clay, I'd be curious for both your thoughts on this. I mean, are you hopeful that you will, and for the family, of course, as well, get what you believe is justice in this case? I mean, are we in a new environment, perhaps, even after all those terrible killings that went before? Briefly, you, Carlton, and then I'll get an answer from Clay.
I do believe that there can be justice. I mean, if we look at what happened with the George Floyd trial, and that investigation that resulted in the conviction of Derek Chauvin, we saw that the state attorney general, Keith Ellison, he literally put his foot into that investigation and prosecution. He oversaw the whole thing. He made sure that there was transparency to the extent that there could be with the community. And he also ensured justice at the end of the day. And to this day, the community is greatly appreciated to him and all the other attorneys who worked on that case. So that's something that could potentially also happen in Michigan. Now, I'll have Clay speak more to that.
Clay?
Yeah, I think we, one of the things I said last evening when we were having a conversation with some of the local reporters here in the news media, I said, we have to always be hopeful. We have to always, trust in the process, but we have to press the necessary buttons to get the justice that is necessary. And in this case, specifically in this case, it would behoove, I think, the community or I should say, the leadership in the city of Grand Rapids to support our request and our desire to have this case taken over by the Michigan Attorney General's office. I fully believe, and we fully believe, that the Kent County Chief Prosecutor Chris Becker should immediately recuse himself. And if he doesn't, the Michigan Attorney General should come in and take this investigation.
We will see, Clay, whether that actually develops or not. But I want to thank both of you so much for joining us from Grand